if the secret sauce is partially my ability to be upfront, honest, and as well researched and knowledgeable as I can be. And so, you got to do that strategically.
Yeah.
I may ask you to spend several $1,000s, and that may be a huge ask for you. But I promise you, I'm doing it from a point of view of let's figure out the biggest bang for the buck. Okay.
Yep.
Yes, this is an investment for you, but I'm going to tell you, I promise you, it's going to be a worthwhile.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody, this is Max Pittman from WriteForMe, and you're listening to another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast, where we meet the experts who are making things happen and scaling their businesses. And today we're talking about Brandi Herrman Communications with Miss Brandi Herrman herself. So, Brandi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I'm excited to dive into Brandi Herrman Communications. You've been in the marketing and communication strategy space for about 2 years now. So excited to dive into, what's going on there and who you're working with. But before we jump into the organization itself, our community is built of entrepreneurs like yourself, executives, sales and marketing leaders like yourself. So as the head of the company, feel free to tell our Business Ninjas community a little bit about yourself and maybe some of the things you're focused on.
Yeah, that's great. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I really had no intention of being an entrepreneur myself. I worked in nonprofits, higher ed, on marketing, communication strategy, specifically PR in a lot of situations. And I never really wanted to have my own business. And then, life happened and it seemed like an open door for me. And so I sort of walked very tentatively through the door. And one of the first things is, okay, so tell us who you are. And so I knew about the elevator pitch. I knew how important that was, but I fumbled over it for a good 6 months. I mean, it was hard to synthesize. And the reason why is because I felt like I could do a whole lot of everything. I was like, well, I can do that, and I can do that, and I can do that, and I learned a lot about that. And so over the last 2 years, I've had this wonderful experience of walking the walk. And that has been so beneficial. So here it is. Here's my elevator pitch. I'm Brandi Herrman. I have Brandi Herrman Communications. I help small to medium-sized businesses and nonprofits with their communication strategy and marketing goals. So there you go. There's my little elevator pitch about what I am and what I'm doing.
I love it. Fantastic. That was spot on. Honestly, one of the best I've heard in a while. So it sounds like, you found potentially a gap, from what you were doing before in your, corporate/professional life.
Mm-hmm.
Like most entrepreneurs do, you found a gap that you could potentially solve for, right? So what's kind of origin story here to why you started, Brandi Herrman Communications?
Well, I really wish the origin story had something to do with like a radioactive spider or something, but mine is that, I was working in higher ed and then I started teaching full time. So I taught in college. I taught, a whole bunch of stuff. It was fantastic. I taught social media marketing, sports marketing, event marketing, advertising. I used to do all the things. And that was fantastic because I got to take my professional experience, then turn it into a classroom teaching on, mentorship kind of thing. And what I ended up doing was reaching out to small businesses around my community and saying, hey, would you like some students to help you with a project? Benefits the students because the students get to learn, benefits you because you're small and you need some help. And so, it was a great experience and I would connect those. And then after about 3 years of doing that in different capacities, I sort of said, man, I just wish I could do it for them. Right. It was one thing to have that experience of helping a student figure it out, but I always had to start back at the beginning. Every single time I had to start back at the beginning and train up the students to get to a certain point. And then that's as far as I could take them in that class in that semester. And then I'd bring in new clients and new students and I'd start back at the beginning. And I got really invested in these businesses, these small businesses. And so when I was ready to pivot to something new, I thought, who do I really want to help? Well, I really want to help small businesses, but I don't want to help small businesses on this silo or that silo or this other silo. I want to help them across the board. I want to come in as that expert and help them with their whole strategy, right? I'm not talking about somebody to run their social media. I do that. I'm not talking about someone to run some digital ads. I can do that too. I'm talking about someone who can do and understand the whole thing. And the reason why I found that this audience matters or this is a need is because I don't know if you've been a small business owner, but as you scale a business, you start out and it's you and it's your idea and you have this sort of central thing, and you realize that you kind of have to do, especially in that solopreneur space, you have to do everything yourself, right? So you're doing the actual business, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the sales, the finances, the accounting, right? You're doing everything, the billing. And then as you begin to make some money, you grow and you begin to outsource things outside. And one of the easy things to do is to outsource, bookkeeping or those kinds of things. Another easy, quote unquote, thing to outsource is the marketing. So begin to outsource the marketing. But what you tend to do is outsource pieces of the marketing more than the full marketing strategy. You're like, okay, I need someone to take care of social media or this or that or the other thing. And so what I found is they don't have someone with a strategic approach. So they start to outsource, but you're outsourcing pieces and not the strategy component. And I wanted to come in and help someone from that high level strategic point of view. You're running your business, you're doing amazing things. Let me just take that from you and help you excel, right? Help you be the best you can be. And so that's what I started to sort of present out there, is that idea of a fractional CMO. Let me be your chief marketing officer. Let me understand your business from beginning to end. Let me love your business. And then I'll find what you need next, whether that's sometimes my clients, I'm like, listen, logo, you got to work on that. And so I go and I find the designers, I find the people, I pay attention to cost. I'm taking it on as if I am a member of their team, and I find the right person and we get the logo fixed. And then I give them advice on what's next. They're in control, they decide. But I'm coming at it from the point of view of, I'm not selling anything to you. I'm just telling you my opinion from years of experience is that you need this next. This is your next priority, or this. You can do this too. Here's why.
Yeah.
And then I point them in the right direction and help them get it done.
I wish I would have taken your classes in college.
I still teach if you want to, come into one of my classes.
I love it. So it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is it's a very hands-on approach, right? Lots of love, which you don't necessarily hear in marketing too, right?
Yeah, I throw that nonprofit in there, and I was actually talking to a student just today, and he said, "Well, tell me about this. Why you do nonprofits, et cetera." And I said, "Because my heart is so big." I have this big, big heart, and nonprofits generally just don't have. They have lots and lots of needs, but they have very few abilities, and so in terms of finances. And so for nonprofits and small businesses, they're very much in the same space for me in terms of, you're bootstrapping, you're trying to do the most with the smallest amount of money. And so, you got to do that strategically.
Yeah.
I may ask you to spend several $1,000s, and that may be a huge ask for you as a nonprofit to spend several $1,000s on a revamped, whatever. But I promise you, I'm doing it from a point of view of, let's figure out the biggest bang for the buck. Okay. Yep. Yes, this is an investment for you, but I'm going to tell you, I promise you, it's going to be a worthwhile investment. We're going to find the best solution for you, because I know money's an issue. It always is.
Sure. Yeah, I love that you're so invested in small businesses specifically and helping them, because your expertise as a marketing professional is spread across the board, right? So like, it sounds like your your expertise is in a lot of different areas when it comes to marketing. I mean, look, you're a professor, right? So, what would you say though, from, if you were to be pitching to a new nonprofit potentially about what your services are, like what would you say is like your secret sauce? Why would someone, choose you as a fractional CMO?
Well, I think the thing that I do that other marketing, it depends on which category you place me, right? So I go across a lot of different places. If you're going to look for someone who is the best paid search person in the world, I promise you it's not me. I mean, there are better paid search specific people for your buck, right? But I can sniff out who is and who isn't good at it, right? I can tell you that. So if the secret sauce is partially my ability to be upfront, honest, and as well researched and knowledgeable as I can be. But more than that, I think my background comes from a communications background. So I can do all the marketing stuff. I can also do a really good job of telling you when you've hit on something that's worthwhile to be shared by others. I can sort of feel who is going to work for you and not work for you in terms of audiences, how to reach out to them. So I have a little bit of that understanding of personalities and people that allows you to be really good at communicating, whether that's asking for money, whether that's finding your right audience and then figuring out where they are. Those are huge in terms of, I can use all the tools, all the marketing tools. I can do all those things. But if you haven't hit the nail on the head in terms of who you're talking to, what they want, what they desire, that sort of real true understanding of your audience, you're not hitting the mark anyway. So I think that's where I come in, and just sort of that intuitive knowing people, researching, understanding different audiences, and then having the ability to do that media relations thing, as well as the marketing pieces.
So what would you say, I guess, then, with, the companies that you've partnered with or want to partner with, like, what would you say, like, the majority of their biggest challenges are? Is it just, is it a web presence, right? You mentioned logos, you mentioned like marketing, PR, communications. Like, do you see any general themes there, I guess, maybe for specific industries that you're focused on?
Well, I think one of the things that I knew, I sort of was reluctant to get into social media management. It was an area that I teach social media marketing, right? But guess what? Social media management is a grind. I mean, it is a day in, day out, just constant kind of thing. And I thought, gosh, I don't know if I want to jump into that space or not for my clients. And I eventually did. And the reason why is because it was just a huge need. There was just a need for someone. And the one piece of it is that day in, day out, just I tell my students, social media, you got to feed the beast, right? You just feed the beast all the time. But the second piece of it was, but if you don't provide the right content, if you don't understand your audience, if you don't speak to them and realize that you aren't the most important, they are, if you aren't providing something of value to your audience, you're not doing that right either. So I think that's the thing that I kind of came to was, maybe this is an area where people really want someone to take it over for them, really want, please just handle my social media. And what I bring to that is a level of expertise and understanding of the target market and really truly resonating with them. And that sort of others first, audience first kind of focus, where it's stop selling, just please stop selling. You're not going to do quality work if you are selling 80% of the time. I take the 80-20 rule. The typical way you think about the 80-20 rule is 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers. That's how 80-20 is typically talked about in a business setting. I flip it and I say 80-20 in terms of your content strategy. 20% of the time are you allowed to talk about in a fairly overt way that you want to sell something to someone. But 80% of the time, you should be offering something of value, whether that's entertainment, whether that's education, whatever that is. You gotta be unselfish. You gotta be thinking about them first. They'll come to you. That's the whole concept of content marketing. Provide something and your audience will come. And so, that's how I approach social media management.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, 50% of B2B buyers are going to view at least 3 to 5 pieces of a company's content before, even engaging with a sales rep. And, if you're not producing any content, you basically don't exist these days too, right?
Well, why would I go to someone if I'm asking for if I'm trying to size you up, so to speak, and figure out what you're about, and all the content you produce is come buy from me, come do this. Well, you didn't convince me of that. You didn't provide me anything of value. So how do I know if I pay you that you're going to provide me something of value? Right. And I think that's partially where my experience as a teacher helps, in that, I'm constantly living in the world of best practices because I'm teaching my students best practices. And so I constantly live in that world as I'm teaching them. And it just sort of segues into my business practices because I'm saying it over and over and over. And so it's in my head all the time, what we should be doing.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of pivot and talk about you. Like what would you say the biggest challenge, that you're facing right now at Brandi Herrman Communications? Like what's top of mind, for you is, probably a lot of different things, right? But, I don't know if it's, scaling and growing, I just want to kind of understand like what's the biggest challenge that you're facing?
That's absolutely. I think that's for any entrepreneur. And as they start a business, is that figuring out, okay, when is the right time to really scale, right? When am I ready to? And then how do I do it? And what's the best way forward? And, all those decisions are just on your shoulders, right? They're resting right there. And it's like, oh God, I have to make all these decisions myself. And so I think some of it is that. I think for me, I finally figured out how I want to scale, right? So when I first started, as I said, I was kind of like, well, I was really terrible to elevator pitch because I could do a little bit of everything. And so I finally figured out, yeah, what I really want to do is that fractional CMO thing. I want to come in and do this for others to help people figure out what they need and give them what they need without any bias. And so, so for me, I think the next step is figuring out how to really scale and seeking out those people who are going to fit with what I provide. Not everybody loves Brandi Herrman. I will tell you that. I'm out there. I am pretty opinionated. I will tell you just what I think, hopefully as nicely as I can, but I'll tell you the truth. And so, you got to find the right client. You got to find the right person who jives with you. But yeah, I think I'm at that point of, okay, now I'm ready to grow. I figured out a lot of the basics. Now I'm ready for the next step. I'm ready to level up, as a friend of mine says. And so that's my next big thing. That's my next big challenge, so to speak.
Love it. That's great. Sounds like a really interesting point at the company for yourself. Like, but how are you planning to grow and scale? Like, help me and other entrepreneurs understand like where you are in this inflection point and what your plans are.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm doing is I spend a lot of time on education as a way to grow. So I'm sort of increasing the content that I'm putting out, making it more bite-sized content in terms of, little how-to kinds of, whether videos or written content, really focusing on my blog. So I'm definitely using, all the strategies I talk about in terms of content marketing on myself. That's the biggest thing. So I am not probably someone who's going to be, throwing a lot of money into digital ads. I can't compete in that space. That isn't, that's for the big agencies. That's for people who are different than my audience. I'm really going to compete in the sphere of creating content, helping small businesses figure out what to do next. And if what I say resonates with them, then I think, that's where I'm going to draw people in, where they hear what I say. They like a little bit of what I say. They like the way I talk, sort of the straight shooting kind of thing. And then that's when they see value. And that's the approach I'm taking.
I assumed it was a little bit of drinking your own champagne, right?
Yeah, I mean, content marketing, if I didn't want to do it, if I didn't want to do it for myself, I wouldn't sell it to my clients, and that's why I'm on this podcast, honestly, is because this is one of the things that I really believe is something that can work for some clients, right? And so I gotta drink the champagne, as you said. I gotta figure it out for myself. I have to do it for myself first, use myself as a guinea pig, see how it works, and then I can sell it to whoever, whichever of my clients it makes sense for. So this is just another form of content that I'm thinking of for that entire content strategy for myself and for clients.
Love it. Yeah. So it sounds like the marketing strategy that you're doing right now for educating customers is obviously a little bit of like where your expertise is, which is educational content, writing, videos, getting yourself out there on social. Does that sound kind of fair? Kind of.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the areas that I really love is, that concept of branding yourself. How do you build your own persona? For me in particular, my business is me. I'm intrinsically my business. And so what I love about that is that I have a platform called LinkedIn that I can be my professional self and really maximize. And I actually teach classes to fellow business owners on how to maximize LinkedIn. How do you make sure that you are doing that networking thing in person? That's awesome. Always do networking in person, but you can use other tools to do the networking digitally. There's a way to be authentic in the way you do that. There are right ways and wrong ways to do LinkedIn. It's not a hard sell. I did a class with someone recently, and we talked about what do you post and how does that work. And I said, I get the most benefit from my LinkedIn when I talk about myself as a business owner, when it's somewhat personal, when I talk about my journey as an entrepreneur, or when I talk about a breakthrough I had in my business. I remember when I posted, I had like a little, a fanfare kind of moment when I sent off my first 1099s. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got to the point of hiring a contractor for my business. And I sent off the 1099 and celebratory moment. I got some of the best traction on that on LinkedIn because people were like, I kind of like Brandi. I know Brandi. I like her. And yeah, you. Or with someone who maybe doesn't know me very well, but they're also a small business owner. And they're like, yeah, I remember the first time I paid someone else to help me. That was a huge moment. Mm-hmm. So I use social media in a very personal way. And I try to teach others, even if you're talking about a business, talk about it in a very approachable, personal, authentic way. And it resonates. It works.
I love it. Yeah, that's exactly the type of marketing that resonates. Is a little bit of personalization, right? Telling your story, leveraging platforms where you actually have a network there as well, to get your story out there. Great ways to again, like kind of preach to the choir about like the challenges you're going through, because everyone can relate to those challenges if they're entrepreneurs, right? So. What is something though that like you want to celebrate like a year from now? Is it, your second 1099? Is it, a new account? Is it expanding geos? Is it expanding territories? Have you thought about like something you want to celebrate like a year from now?
That is a really awesome way to put that. By the way, I love the way you asked that question because it wasn't about goals. It was about the end result of getting to a goal, which is that celebration, which that's a fantastic way to ask the question. I think probably what I would like to do is get to a point where I have a varied client list and I'm helping a lot of people every day. And that lot of people doesn't have to be like a huge number. I think if I got to a point where I was helping, 20 clients on the regular, I would be so excited about that. I would just be so excited to be helping people as in particular, if I got to the point of saying, let's say I had 5 of those clients were what I would consider fractional CMO clients, where they were or maybe 10, where they were, I need your expertise, Brandi. I want you to come in and help me with the whole thing. Tell me the whole thing. Tell me what I should do. That advice giving, that ability for me to take what I'm living day in and day out by teaching, my experience, all those things. If I could have most of my clientele be that kind of client, that's where I would be super excited. That doesn't mean I'm not doing day-to-day social media management. I still think that's probably a big component of what I'm going to do in order to be successful. But what I would love is when they would see me as more of a partner, more as someone who's coming in and helping them with the big picture. That's where I think I would be really excited to be. But it happens in increments. Sometimes you start with social media and then they trust you a little more and a little more and a little more. And so, yeah, I'll get there. Maybe in a year.
Yeah, love it. Right. Like it's getting your foot in the door, earning the trust, seeing
Earn
the
it. Yeah, you
right?
got to earn it, right? It's the same thing with content marketing, right? You earn their trust so that they come to you and ask for the next thing, whatever that next thing is, and just creating those for people, right? Creating those steps for people, creating those itty bitty steps that they can take and letting them take those steps when they're ready. That's the real deal.
Well, where can people find you, Brandi? I know you mentioned LinkedIn earlier. What's the best way for people to find you or get a hold of you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is great. It's BL Herrman, HERRMAN. So that's always a tricky one, is to get people to throw the extra R in there. I actually started my website because it's always a good idea to own your name as a URL. So I'm brandiherrman.com because it's a good idea. Well, and the funny thing about that is because I never intended to really be an entrepreneur, I thought, gosh, I've been spending years building my digital brand online. I spent years doing this. So I just decided when I started my own business, what should I call it? And I said, well, I'm just going to call it my name, because if you search my name up, Brandi with an I, 2 R's and Herrman, you find out like that's me. And I'm talking about marketing. It's my LinkedIn. It's all these things. I own my own URL, right? So I decided, well, I'm going to double down on the thing I've been working on in the background my whole career. And so that's the name. So for better or worse, that's how you can find me, as long as you know how to spell my name.
Perfect. Well, we can absolutely include that in the description as well. And yeah, for everyone listening who wants to be an entrepreneur, go by yournamedomain.com. I have done that as well. I don't have anything with my .com, but one of these days I will. I'm not sure what it'll be, but one of these days I will.
Well, I tell every single student I have, buy your URL. And sometimes their name is Joe Smith and they're like, well, crud. Sorry, taken. But when you have a name like mine, it works. So
I love it. That's great. Well, I think this has been a great story. And you have such a great perspective on, on marketing in general, just considering like you're a professor, you're a teacher, you're a CMO, a fractional CMO, you've been in this space for a long time, and kind of seeing how you transition from, being at the corporate world to being in the higher education world, now to being in the entrepreneurial world. It's such a great story to share, and I appreciate you doing that with us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I love, dipping my toe in all the things. So who knows what's next, but it's been fun so far.
You bet. Well, I appreciate you being here. I enjoyed the conversation for sure. I know I've learned a lot about you, and now I've learned a lot more about Brandi Herrman Communications. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. That wraps up another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast. Everyone have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.